Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today I'm set this Bava Batra daf Kuf Ayin Hey. We are going to begin on Kuf Ayin Dalad Amud Beis, 5 lines from the bottom. Rav Huna. With regard to a shchimira, which we've been learning a lot in this past parak, someone who is on their deathbed, shehikdish kol nechasav. So basically, everything that he says, I want to give to the Beis Hamikdash. But Omer, then he also says, Manila ploini biyadi, that out of all my millions of dollars, there's $100 over here that belongs to such and such a person. So Neman. So in that case, we're going to believe what he's saying, and that money is actually going to go to that person. Because Chazaka and Kununya al Hektish. He's not going to play games with Hektish. Basically saying, oh, I'm giving my money to Hektish, oh, but there's this money which doesn't belong to you. He's obviously not going to do that, causing games, again, a kununya for Hektish. The Gemara asks, maybe that's not so true. Would a person play such a game with their own children? No, but we're going to see that the din is going to be different. They both say that person says, regarding, again, on his deathbed, and he says that there's a certain amount of money that I owe to another person. Amr Tenu Naisen. If he actually says, give the money to this person, then only then will we give the money. However, Lo Amr Tenu Ein Naisen. However, even though he said that the money belongs to someone else, if he doesn't say the word Tenu, we're not going to give it to the other person. Alma, Adam, Asri Shul has to be as Banav. Maybe the whole reason, says Rashbam, is Chavin Shul Yachziku Ka'asher, Lo Huv Lo Banav. He doesn't want to act wealthy, so therefore he wants to pretend maybe that he has all these debts, even though he may not have any debts. So he can do a kanunya, and therefore, regarding his children, and the fact that if he doesn't say tenu, it doesn't go to this other person, as we continue Kuf Ayin Ham and Aleph. So why don't we say the same thing? Hachinami, when it comes to Hektish, Adam also shul has bias atzmai. He doesn't want to, again, act like he has all this extra money. So how do we know, in fact, that this money should be given to this person with regard to Hektish? Maybe, in fact, it should all go to Hektish. So, Ki Ka'imar Rav Huna Hasam de Nakat Shtara. Over here, we're talking that not only is there a Shchimira, but the lender actually is holding on to a star. And therefore, for that reason, he has more strength. So, Mechlal de Rabbi Shmuel de Lo Nakat Shtara. So the case of Rabbi Shmuel regarding the son, so in which he makes a difference between Tenu or not Tenu, is probably in a case where there is not a star. The Malvad does not have a star. So Omer Tenu Naisten. So what do we say? That even though there's no star, but if the Shchimira says Tenu, we'll give it to this other person. But why? Milva Pehavi. Rabbi Shmuel Dimmer Tevayu, Milva Peh Enu. So when he dies, why would we give this money to this person? You can't collect from the assignment. This money belongs to the assignment. Both of the cases, the Malv is holding onto the star. So the question is, okay, I understand the reason by Hektish. The Malv is pretty clear. He has a star. So why don't we say the same thing by the case of the son? Why does he have to say Tanu? Why does the Shchimir have to say Tanu? Kasha. One is if it was authenticated. Omer Tanu, once you say Tanu, then Kaimul Shtari. That actually is the way of authenticating the star. Omer Tanu, Lo Kaimul Shtare. So even though there is a star, but it wasn't authenticated, who says it's true? So let's look in the Rashbam. Omer Rav Nachman, Bein Zeh She'omer Shchimira Manla Ploini Biyadi, Behu Bali Parim Min Hektish. They want to collect from Hektish. Ubein Zeh Haboli Parim Banav, Kul Shtari Nikite. They actually are holding onto the star. Ha de Hektish Mimakuyim the Ika Henpek. So if there's a handpick, if there's a document which is authenticating it, so then in that situation, he can take from Hektish, he can take from the sons. So I just want to clarify, the way that I said it initially, it's not that he made this statement and then Hektish gets some and this guy gets some. The money went to Hektish, and then the question is, since he said the statement, can that person take the money from Hektish? That's the idea. Lomer Tenu, says the Rashbam, Chayshinan Dilman Mishum Dol Aspias Banav Amarachi. Vulgavi Adim Kamu Shtare. So he actually needs the shtar to be verified, because it's possible on the other side that he may not have been sincere in his statement that the money is owed to someone who's just trying to not act rich. Omer Rabba. So you have again the same case. There was Shchimira that says not money leploini biyadi, but rather he says mana it's the exact same language. Basically, he says that I owe this guy money. The Amri Yisaimim Paranu. And the Yisaimim say, don't worry about it, because the guy died. So can the guy collect now from the Yisaimim? The Yisaimim say, no, we already paid them up. Nemanim. We believe the Yisaimim. To Namana Laplani, if he says, give this money directly to Ploni, V'yam Yisaimim Paranu, we paid him back. Then the Yisaimim are not believed. So Klapulaya, Ibcha Mastabra, the opposite should be the truth. Omer Tenu Mana, if he made a direct statement to his children that when I die, which is in a few seconds, I want to make sure that you give this money to someone. So we're going to assume that they probably did. Kivan de Pas Gavuhan Lamilsa Equal Member de Pare. It's more logical in that case that they paid it off. However, if all he said was Manula Plinibiadi, the father didn't give a direct order to the Yisaimim to pay this guy. Equal member de Lopari. They probably didn't pay. El Ian or Hachimar. So that wasn't correct. So if it was said, this is how you're supposed to read it. Which is not a direct command. And then the Yisaimim have all this money. And they say Yisaimim V'amru Yisaimim Chazer v'amr lanu abba parati nemon. And then the Yisaimim said, yeah, but Chazer v'amr lanu. Then our father said, parani v'amr lanu abba parani nemonim. My taima it kuri midker. Says the Rashbam. So Dilma idkuri midker. Maybe they remember. But if he said tenu manalaploini, v'amr yisaimim chaz v'amr abba parati in emanim dim isa the pari. If he would have paid, lo havi amr tenu. He wouldn't have said tenu. In other words, the fact that he said tenu means it wasn't given yet. However, in the case where he said, "Oh yeah, I owed money to this person," but then the father says, I paid it off, then he's believed, because all he's doing is just recollecting of how much monies were owed. I owe money to this guy, I paid him back. But if you say tenu to the kids, obviously it's because he hasn't paid it back yet. Dim is the pari will have yomer tenu. So boy Rava. Now I ask the following question. Shchimira shahida mahu. Shahida. Says Rashbam. So you have a Baal Chayv that says that there's monies that you have. You owe me money. And the Shchimira says yes. The Sarach Shirmer Atem Eidai. You have to say Atem Eidai, or else you can just say I was jesting with you. So Mahu. Sarach loimer atem edai or in sarach loimer atem edai. Normally you do need to say it, but over here, because we're a shchimira, maybe it's different. Sarach shemer kitovu or in sarach loimer kitovu. Says Rashbam in Cheskas Abatim. Remember that on Daf Mem. It said hoide b'fnei shnayim. If you admit in front of two people, sarach shemer kitovu. You have to say, write it down. Adam Mishate b'shas mitzah o ein adam mishata b'shas mitzah. Does a person goof around and fool around at the time of misa? In other words, are they going to be extremely sincere, and therefore when he says yes, he's not saying mishata nibach, and therefore he doesn't need to say matam edai, you don't need to say write it down. So basna boy hada pashta, it's obvious. Ein adam mishata b'shas misa. This admission is enough to be chayiv. Okay. Question 1. Shchimira she'aymer tenu manu Pliny. So you have a shchimira who says, give money to Pliny. V'amr yisamim paranu. And they say, we already paid it back. O she'amr chazer v'amr alba parati hi'im ne'manim. Okay. And then, like 4 questions here. Shchimira she'amr manu Pliny. Biyadi. V'amr yisamim paranu. So I would have preferred it been written differently. So again, if he says to give the money and the Yisraelim say paranu, then in that case they are believed. If all he said was money ploying biyadi, then they're not believed. Okay. Now, what happens if they said, oh yeah, but then our father said parati? So in that case, they're going to be believed if he did not say the word tenu. If he said tenu, then they're not going to be believed, because then why did he say tenu? It must be because he was saying, I didn't pay it, I want you to pay it. Question 2. So you don't need to say atem edai. Then adam mishata b'shas misa. And kaisvin star, you can write a star, alphabi shloi omer kitavu, even if he didn't tell you to write it, because the divrei shchimura kasuvin kamasurim damu. Okay. Let's look at question TA9. Shchimura she'omer mana laplini biyadi omer tenu noisnin loy omer tenu ein noisnin be'ez oifen ayri. So what are we talking about? And umatam maskana. So we ended up saying, let's get all this down over here. This is TA9. I got this question completely wrong, which is a little sad. We ended up saying that Edi denokat shtara. The truth is there is a star involved. However, had mekuyim hadol mekuyim. Let's see what he writes over here. Ayri b'shtar she'in mekuyim. Aymer tenu kayim l'shtara. Lo yimer lo kayim l'shtara v'adamas yishlul hasbi es banav. Okay. So, Aymer tenu kayim l'shtare. However, otherwise not. Okay. Question TB10. Milva peh. Okay, we didn't get to that yet. Let's see the next Mishnah. Let's see the last Mishnah. Right? This is the last Mishnah in this Masechta. Amazing. Okay. Says the Masnisin. You say to stick a Mishnah. Malvis chaver b'shtar. If you lend money and you have it's a milva b'shtar, so goyim v'chas mishubadim. So you can still, and Rashbam says, I feel in kos of achrayis, because we hold achrayis to Sefer who it's the achrayis is written in it. So you can collect from mishubadim. Rashbam says mechurin. So again, if I lend you money and afterwards you're the borrower, you sold your field, and then all of a sudden I'm the malva, I want to collect money from you, I'm able to collect that field technically. If you have nobody chayin, I can collect nechas mishubadim, because there was a kol. That person who bought that field should have known that there was a loan against you. So before you buy a property, you need to make sure that you should know that the person you're buying the land from isn't a lova, because it's possible, especially if it's a milva b'shtar, then he can come after me. However, Ali they ate him. If let's say there was just witnesses, which is really like a milva al peh, it was not written down, so there's no coal in that case. So if I would buy land, I'm not necessarily going to know that this took place. So therefore, goyivin minachasim b'nei chayrin. You only can collect from b'nei chayrin, but not from the chasim shabanim, not from encumbered properties. As we continue to kuf ayin hey amid beis, ha'yitzil of ksav yadai. Let's say the malva, the lender, produces a promissory note, shu chayev lo, that he's owed money. Goyivim nechas b'nei chayrin. Also in that situation, he can collect from only b'nei chayrin, but not from the chas mishubadim, because this is not tantamount to a milva b'shtar. Says Rashbam, kivan de'ika milva de kasa b'shtar, when there was an actual loan with a document, with witnesses, the kivan de'ika tarti, there's two things, shtar ve'edim, two things, a shtar and a witness, and witnesses, mafkale lakala. Lakuchais hu diasido nafshahu, shalo chokru b'dover. So again, if you bought property from someone who owes money, that's kind of on you. But over here, if we're just dealing with a promissory note, so in that situation, you only collect from b'nei chayrim, not from the chas mishubadim. Okay. Arev, when we deal with a cosigner, hayotzel acher chitum shtarais. Says Rashbam, shekasa b'soich shtar acher chasimas edim. He writes underneath the signatures of the witnesses, ani ploni ben ploni arev. I am the cosigner. So if that's the case, then goyva you can collect from the arev menuchas b'nei chayrin, only from b'nei chayrin property. Says Rashbam, min ha'arev ba'arvus shabal peh. The milva al pehi kivan chasimi edim al ha'arvus. Even though he signed on a document, but he signed below the signatures. So for all intents and purposes, it's possible that the shtar was already written up, witnesses left, and then he just signed something on the bottom. So that doesn't count to him as a milva b'shtar for him to collect from nechasim mishubadim. Of course, you can collect from the lova nechasim mishubadim, but not the arev. Masabel if near Bishmuel v'yarmer gavim nechasim b'nei chayrin. That's it. Armel ben nenes in a gaiva lo nechasim mishubadim v'lo nechasim b'nei chayrin. You can't collect from anyone. From anyone. It says Rashbam, the whole arev shall acher matan mais. If this malva came later, this arev lo havi arev shlo al emunasai v'haftachasai shall arev zeh halvo. Since the malva lent the money without the faith of the arev, because it was signed before the arev did anything, so therefore he's not really an arev. Amrlo hari hachainikis echad b'shuk. Someone who's getting strangled in the marketplace, umatza chavero, and you chance upon this guy. You say, leave him alone. Vani etenucha potter, and I'll give him to you. So potter shlo al amunaso hilvai. So again, in that situation, you're potter, because you were just doing it to basically get him off. Okay, shlo al amunaso halvasai. Again, when it comes to the leiva, he wasn't doing it because of the arev. The arev signed only afterwards. If I say, lend and then I will give to you, right? But and then shechein al munasu hilvai, the malva only lent because of the arev. Someone wants to be smart. You should learn dini mominus. There's nothing greater as far as being able to delve into the depths of knowledge more than with dini mominus. It's comparable to this deep stream of water. If you want to really become a chacham and know the laws of Dini Mominus, be an apprentice to Shimon ben Nenes. Says the Gemara, Ula. Now, the Vartar, even though that's not what we said in the Mishnah. We said in our Mishnah only Nechasim Mishubadim are collected from a Milva B'Shtar, not Milva Peh. But technically, it should work even by Milva Peh. My time, because Shibuda Deraisa. Because when you owe money, there's a Din Deraisa that there's a Shibud on everything. Vel my time Amar Milva Peh Goiva, El Nechasim B'Nicharin. So why did the Chamim say that when it comes to B'Nichayin, when it comes to a Milva Peh, that we don't collect from Nechasim Mishubadim? Mishum Seder L'Kuchais. Because it's not fair. Again, there's no coal. So if I'm going to buy land, I'm not going to know necessarily if this person is owed money. Because it's a milva peh. So therefore, milva peh, you can't take from the chasm shabadim. So you hakim milva b'shtar nami. No hasdim inhu ninu diavsin afshayu. They're the ones that lost themselves. They should have interrogated. They should have looked into it. Since there was a coal by milva b'shtar, and you didn't care, and you bought the land anyway, so the land could technically be taken away from you. That's Ula. Rabbi Omer, he says, no. Even when it comes to a milva b'shtar, you should never be able to take other people's land. My time, because shibuda lab diraisa. And therefore you shouldn't be able to take someone else's land. So matam omer milva b'shtar gam nechas mishabadim. So why can you take land away when it comes to a milva star? Because if you can start taking, if you can't take nechas mishubadim ever, then lenders are not going to want to lend money out anymore, because they're going to be like, this person's just going to lose all of his money, and then I'm going to be stuck. There's no coal, and therefore by milva pad that far we didn't go. So it almost sounds like they agree. But does Rabbi say this? So we had this before. Does he really hold Shibuda's lav deraisa? But we learned in the 8th parak Yesh Neichlin, says the Rashbam, Shalch mitam b'chor no to pishnayim b'milveh. Now when it comes to a firstborn, we know he gets pishnayim, he gets a double portion. You can even get it when it comes to a loan. What does that mean? So Allah gavu karka b'chayvus aviyan. He can collect from the land. Yeshlo de kaman de mishabed b'chayavuhin dami. Kareem bin b'chol hasheyimatzelo al shibuda deraisa. Because one of the key elements is ein habachor noit l'roi kavamuchsak. It has to be here. So when it comes to land, Yeshlo, it's considered like he's able to get it. And therefore it's not like it's accounts receivable. It's monies that he really has right now. Why? Must because he holds Shibuda Deraisa. So that's the kasha. V'chi tema epoch, the Rabba Ula, Uda Ula or Rabba, let's flip them around. V'amar Ula, the Vartar Bal Chayiv, Dina B'Ziburis. We know that Ula says that when it comes to a Bal Chayiv, technically, even though we say only the Ksuba Ziboris, however, when it comes to a Bal Chayiv, it's Bebein Nishlo Tino Delos Bifnei Lavin. So why would he hold that you collect from the least level of land? Says the Rashbam, quoting the first parak in Baba Kama, you have a Isha Shirata Naisabo Yaitzi, Ma Darcha Shal Adam Haitzi Pachash Bakalim Alma Shiba Ziburis Deraisa. So he actually says, I read it a little bit differently, but the point is that he holds Ziboris because when you give something which is of yours to the Malve, you're obviously going to give him the worst of all the things you have. You're not going to give him your best. So we see it's Ziboris. El Rabba Taima de Bnei Marava Kaimer. He's actually explaining the reasons of that which is in Eretz Yisrael. But he just doesn't hold like him. Says Rashbam, according to Rabbi himself, he says you don't get. According to him, he holds Shibuda's Lav Diraisa. Therefore, we don't have to change anything. He holds Shibuda is Lav Diraisa. Which is what we're saying with Shitaso over here. So what do you mean it says that he can collect karka? No, he can't. Bechor does not get pishnaim of the karka because it's considered roy in noitel roy kevamuchsek. Rav Shmuel never tavayu milva peh enu goyva lumini yarshim lumini kuchais. So when it comes to oral loan, you can't take from lukuchais, which we already said because there's no coal, but also not from yorshim. So if all you have is a milva peh, and you go to from the father, and the father died, you can't collect from the Yisayimim. My time is Shibuda Lav Deraisa. Rabbi Yochanan Rav Shimon Lakish Diamar Tivayu. No, milva peh goyvim in yorshim ubein min lukuchais. You could take. My time is Shibuda Deraisa. Meisvei. So we ask a question. It says like this. HaChayfer bor b'shus harabim. So this is okay. A person digs a hole in the Rishus Harabim, v'nafel of shore. Sounds like more like Bava Kama, okay. V'nafel of shore. Okay. An ox falls into it, v'hargu. And it kills the person digging the pit. That's how you're supposed to read it. The animal falls into the pit, and it kills the person digging the pit. Potter. The Baal Hashor is Potter. Okay? So, that's the first part. Let's make sure there's no Rashbam on this. Fine. V'od, el she'im meis Hashor, if the ox dies falling into the pit, Yarshi Baal Habor chayavin l'shalom demei shor l'balav. So they have to pay for the damages of the ox that fell in the pit. So what do we see? The Kasha, says Rashbam, Alma, Milval Peh, Gavim in the Yarshim. The Yarshim do have to, or would have to pay. Amar Vila Amarav, Bish'amad Bedin. We're talking a situation where there was already brought to Beis Din, and therefore, says Rashbam, Kimilva Bishtar Dami. And that's the reason why the Yisraelim have to pay in this case. Vaha Hargu Katani. It says it died in the pit. Amarav Adbarav, okay, Shiasa Treifa. It means the person became a treifa, right? She also has short treifa. V'amar Badin kadim shiatz nishmaso. He went to Beis Din before he died. V'amar Rav Nachman, Tanei Tana Meis V'kavroi. It says the short killed him, and they buried the guy in the pit. He didn't go to Beis Din. Okay, the guy didn't go to the Beis Din. The Beis Din came to him. The Beis Din was at the pit right before he died, and therefore that's the case. Okay, at the end of the day, Kufayin Vav Amad Aleph Amra Papa Hilchasa Milval Peh Goyvim in the Yarshimin Goyvim in Lakuchais, which is our Mishnah said you can't collect from Lakuchais. Goyvim in the Yarshim Kadesh Latino Delos Lif Nelavin. Because we're concerned, if I lend money and this guy is old, as a Milval Peh, I'm not going to ever get my money back. No. So therefore I can collect from the Yisayim, from the Yarshim. However, then the Goyvim in Lakuchos the Leslie Kalo, which again is what our Mishnah says. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's look at question 3. The Chayver Bor, the Nafel Sham Shor Umes, the guy dies in the pit. V'yachach Meis Baal Habor. Okay. So the ox dies. V'yachach Meis Baal Habor. The Im Yarshiv Chayim L'Shalom Demei Hashor. You have to pay for the ox. Okay. So it depends. Lo Amad Bedin. Then it's Tuli Baplut to Im Milva Peh Gavim in the Yarshim. If you hold, and which we do paskin, that we are Gavim the Yarshim, but it's a machlokus if they're not Oma Bedin. If you're Oma Bedin, it's considered like a Milval Peh, and therefore you would collect from the Yisayimim. Okay. Question TA 9. I think I did this already. Yeah. Okay, we did that already. Question TB 10. Milva pet. Him goyim in a yarshim in okuchos l'psak halacha m'gemara mahatam. Okay, a great question. That's a very important question. So I'm glad it was asked at least once. TB 10. So we do collect from the assignment. So I wrote government a yarshim kadesh latino delis mifni lavin. V'lo min l'kuchos beglal she milva peh leis lekala adkan.